You're listening to episode 129 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness teachers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Gunesh Sevinc joins us to speak about a comparison between mindfulness-based stress reduction and relaxation response programs. If you're listening to this podcast and find value and insights from what is shared here, know that this is made possible from your generosity and the generosity of others like you. I want to thank those of you who are making monthly donations to keep this podcast going. And if you're not yet, please take a moment, go to presentmomentmindfulness.com and click on Make a Donation. One-time or especially monthly donations show you value this work, which can't happen without you. Thank you for your help, your support, and your kind generosity. I often hear or read in the media about how mindfulness is about relaxation. If you've taken a secular mindfulness program, you may have experienced for yourself how they are unique and distinct from relaxation-centric interventions. But is there a measurable difference when we also read about how mindfulness is no different than taking a vacation? Yes, there is. And our guest today helps us learn about those measurable distinctions. Gunesh Sevinc is a postdoctoral research fellow in the Department of Psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. Her PhD dissertation focused on neural networks associated with moral cognition, especially those involved in the detection of morally relevant stimuli. Her current research interests include the relationship between mindfulness meditation and moral cognition. She is specifically interested in the structural and functional changes associated with mindfulness practice as they relate to moral behavior and pro-sociality. Currently, she is utilizing multivariate neuroimaging analysis methods to investigate the effects of mindfulness practice in improving cognition. Our guest today is Gunesh Sevinc. Gunesh, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to see you.
Hi, thank you.
And one of the things I want to make sure that the listeners to this episode know in full disclosure is that I've known Gunesh for a while and was very honored and delighted to have her in one of my online live MBSR classes. So it's just really good to see you again.
Thank you. It's good to see you too.
So what I'd like to do is just begin by having you tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So as you might have noticed, I'm not from here, from my accent and from my name. I'm from Turkey, Istanbul. So I studied psychology there. It's actually funny. I went to a British middle school in Turkey, a German high school again in Turkey, and then American college again in Turkey. And then I went to the Netherlands, to Europe, for my master's degree. So if my accent is weird, it's because of my weird past.
A wonderful eclectic mix.
As I said, I studied mental health sciences in the Netherlands, and then I went back to Turkey, worked in a hospital as a psychologist for a couple of years, and then I said, okay, it's time to go back to school. And then I went back to school to pursue my PhD, this time again in Istanbul. But during my PhD, I again came to the US this time for 1 year to complete my dissertation. And then I went back again. And then after a couple of years, I realized that I need to go again if I want to do this right. So I applied for postdoctoral positions in the US, and I'm now a postdoctoral research fellow in Dr. Salazar's lab.
Great. Thank you for that background. And for those who are listening who might have found that a little bit familiar, Gunesh, I'm wondering if you could say just a little bit about the study we're going to talk about. Was done through Sarah Lazar's lab, and there are a few familiar faces as your co-authors. I'm wondering if you might say a little bit about that.
Sure, we have a long list of co-authors. So as you know, Birita Hosal is very great scholar and mindfulness meditation teacher, great person, one of my personal heroes, I should say. Birta Hosal is a co-author. Javaria Hashmi is a co-author. She is a researcher again now in Canada. Jonathan Greenberg was a postdoctoral research fellow. We worked together for 2 years. He is also a co-author. Adrian McAllister, Michael Treadway, Marissa Schneider, Jeffrey Dusek, all the names that you may, James Carmody, all of these names are familiar to the contemplative research field, I assume. And also, of course, Sarah Lazar is the senior author, and actually she is the one who made this study possible for everyone else involved, I should say.
Wonderful. And that's quite a powerful team. So again, a special thanks to Sarah Lazar for assembling the really wonderful people that she has who care about contemplative practice enough to do good science around it. So thanks to you and the entire team. So let's talk a little bit about this particular study. My understanding is that there was a comparison involved here between two different kinds of interventions. One is MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and listeners to this podcast probably have some familiarity with that, at least from knowing John Kabat-Zinn and his work at UMass. And another is relaxation response, and not just as the medical term of what happens in the human body, but as an actual intervention. So I'm wondering, Gunesh, if you could say just a little bit about these two, knowing that this isn't the specific area of expertise for you, but just an overview of the two of them.
Sure. These two programs are actually based on different philosophies. So the philosophy behind mindfulness-based stress reduction is the fact that the more you become aware of the present moment and non-judgmentally aware of the present moment, the less stress symptoms you have is the in a nutshell, the theory behind mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And for the relaxation response program, the philosophy behind it is that if you can control and relax yourselves intentionally, then you will be able to have less stress symptoms. So one emphasizes mindful awareness, while the other emphasizes intentional relaxation of physiological bodily of the body. Actually, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a very good distinction. Thank you for that really good overview. Is that in MBSR, one of the things that is surprising often to people who've not taken the program or those who are just beginning, that there's not really a specific intention of relaxation here. We don't typically have that in the guided meditations as part of the home assignments or the classwork. And noticing what's here, even when it may be tension or difficulty, as part of MBSR, and with relaxation response being a little bit different, that there is an intention to relax. And so, as you said so beautifully, there is a philosophical difference between the two. So, also an interesting part of this study, and one of the criticisms that sometimes comes up from scientists who are not doing research in things that are quite as complex as human behavior, is that this study wasn't simply relying on participant self-report. which can be very heavily skewed by the experience of being with a group or the expectation that I've gone through something, therefore, why, yeah, it had an effect. There was some neurological testing as well. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. We recruited participants. And one other thing that what was good about this research was the fact that participants were randomized into the interventions. So in that way, we eliminated any biases, any intrinsic motivations that participants may have. So participants were randomized to the interventions, and we tested them at baseline, the behavioral, like how stressed they are, how anxious they feel, how much self-compassion they have towards themselves. And then they went through these programs, 8-week programs. And then at the end of the interventions, we assessed their levels of stress and anxiety, self-compassion, but also we scanned their brains during they meditate. So during the actual meditations that they were instructed to in each program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the randomization. Just a brief note about you weren't getting people who are interested in MBSR, taking MBSR, or those who have an interest in relaxation response, taking relaxation response. It wasn't, so you're really clarifying around and controlling for confirmation bias about the program I wanted worked the way I wanted it to.
Exactly. And so this is the method that's that's often used in clinical research. So we adopted such a diligent approach when we were assessing differences between the two programs. And with respect to fMRI, actually, which is good about fMRI is that it's free from these biases. It assesses the signal in one's brain while the person meditates. So this way we think we were able to extract the true difference between the two interventions.
So you had people in the different groups, they took the programs, did the measurements, and what were the results? What did you find?
Well, we have a long list of results. Actually, we had behavioral results as well. First of all, the two programs reduced stress levels. Well, this was expected. So both programs improved mindfulness levels. That's also expected. Both programs improved self-compassion levels. That's also expected. And also they improved rumination levels. So for the behavioral measures, there were differences between the two groups in terms of how much they improved these symptoms. But then again, I always would like to be cautious because the difference was in the subscales of these measures, and we really don't know how well these subscales measure what they intend to measure. Mm-hmm. So I would like to say that there were differences in the subscales, such as acting with awareness subscale of the FFMQ, a mindfulness questionnaire, was significant for the relaxation response, but the difference was not significant for the mindfulness-based intervention. But then again, this is just a subscale of a mindfulness measure, and I don't know how much we can and we should extrapolate from those behavioral measures. But it looks like they do different, they reduce stress through different pathways as we expected.
Yeah. And for those who are listening who might not be familiar with the FFMQ, it's the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire that has different dimensions that it measures. And it is a self-report questionnaire and mixed positive and negative responses that give you some general reflections. And Ganesh has a very good cautionary tale about this, that these are indications, and they're good indications, but these kinds of measures aren't perfect. and should be taken with a grain of salt. And of course, this is a start, and may warrant more exploration to see what can be found from that, especially since this is recollection is probably the first time these have been compared in this way. What else did you find?
So I also should say, as a cautionary tale, that we had a low sample size. It's just due to the difficulties with running such randomized controlled longitudinal investigations, actually. We had 18 people from the relaxation response group and 16 people from the MBSR group whose brains were scanned at post-time points.
Yeah, and that's also a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. As we've mentioned on this podcast and others, is that there's a price tag. Every time you load someone into an fMRI, there's a cost to that, and grant money only goes so far. And so, yes, that is one of the frustrations that is certainly shared by the research community as well. We would love to put in thousands of people in this, and logistically, that's just not something that's going to happen on these studies. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. But we had very interesting, very fun results in terms of their differences in their brain activity. So these differences pertain to the body scan meditation, specific to RR and specific to MBSR. For those that are not familiar with the differences in each of them, for instance, MBSR says, aware of the jaw, the hinge joint on either side of the face, the muscles of the jaw. So it only invites participants for awareness, as opposed to the RR body scan, which says, now bringing awareness to your jaw, and as you exhale, releasing any tension or clenching. So the instructions, participants were lying in the scanner. They know perfectly how to do a body scan, and they are instructed at each step of body scan, so they can hear those instructions which I just read. This way we were able to, or at least we think we were able to, control what was going on in their brains. And of course, this is based on the assumption that they were really engaging in body scan.
Doing the practice of what was said. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes it can be challenging inside the scanner. This was also one of our concerns. But I should say that everything what we find with respect to neural activity is the result of a contrast. So we are comparing relaxation response body scan meditation with resting state. So this is kind of a question, an answer to the question, well, how do you know that they are meditating and not resting? So we are comparing everything with a resting scan, where they are instructed to lie still and remain awake. All of the neuroimaging results I will tell are always body scan versus rest, MBSR body scan versus rest.
Okay.
So our first interesting result is about, so we were first interested in naturally what's common to those programs, right? What do they have in common? To be able to answer this question, so I should also instruct a little bit of our methods. So this is a seed-based functional connectivity, which means if we think of neurons of little creatures jumping together, so we say, okay, brain, tell us which creatures jumped together with our seed here. So we defined, we had a predetermined hypotheses about a region in medial prefrontal cortex. Mm-hmm. We defined a seed there and asked the brain which regions jump together with our creatures in the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. And the results suggested a cluster in the front of the brain, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is implicated in top-down control and executive functioning. What's good about the results is that the amount of functional coupling, functional connectivity, which is how well they jump together.
Effectiveness.
Yes. So how the effectiveness of this connectivity was correlated with differences in stress scores. So the more people were able to connect these two regions, the less they stressed, the less stressed they became following the intervention. This was one of the most exciting results of the study, actually. So this was common to both meditation types and in line with the results, which both show that both interventions reduce stress. And we also have dissociable activity between the two interventions. So for the relaxing body scan, for the RR, we again had a hypothesis, and we said that they are relaxing their physiological response. They are relaxing their bodily muscles. Mm-hmm. So the neural regions which are implicated in this physiological relaxation should be active and more talking to each other. Mm-hmm. So again, we took a seat in a region towards the front of the brain, which is called inferior frontal gyrus, and examined whether there was a significant region which it was talking to. And in line with our expectations, that cluster was coupled with a cluster in supplementary motor area, which is something you would expect, right? Because they are relaxing your physical muscles. And that region is very often implicated in control of physical relaxation. Mm-hmm. And another good thing about it, so we checked whether that difference is strong enough to survive an analysis, a contrast of a contrast of a contrast. Uh-huh. So the contrast is now RR body scan versus rest versus MBSR body scan versus rest. And this functional coupling, which I just mentioned, actually survived that analysis. So this is how we can truly say that, okay, this is what's differentiating it from the other one.
Right. It is predictive. You can see that this is what we would see here. And if this is not true, we won't see this. If it is true, we will see, and you did.
So it differentiated a relaxation response from MBSR,
right?
Which was exciting. We also looked at MBSR, so we were interested in what was unique about MBSR. And the theory behind MBSR focused on awareness, mindful awareness, and a region which is implicated in interoceptive awareness is anterior insula, which is often associated with mindfulness meditation as well. So we took anterior insula as our seed region and looked at functional connectivity of anterior insula, whether it differentiates MBSR from rest. Mm-hmm. A cluster was significant again in the anterior cingulate cortex, which is implicated very often in emotion regulation. But that cluster, that difference, didn't survive our very strict analyses, which is MBSR versus rest versus RR versus rest. So although this analysis was specific to mindfulness, mindful body scan, mm-hmm. It didn't survive our differential analyses, which of course may mean that relaxation response also requires certain amount of awareness. Of course, to be able to relax a body muscle, the person needs to be aware of it first.
Interesting. So some really good, and I really like the way you're describing these results, as there's a level of rigor around analyzing what you're seeing in the data. And I'm curious for you, what did you find interesting about this particular study? Was there anything surprising for you? You're like, oh, that wasn't what I was thinking would happen at all.
Sure, especially as a student of yours, I think I could, after taking your class, I was able to think about what was going on in these participants. Actually, like I had theories before I took the class, and after I took it, I felt more confident in making guesses, if I can say.
Yeah.
First thing which was surprising for me is I think relaxation response, the rigor that is required to make a comparison, right? We are comparing apples with oranges, but to compare apples with oranges, we needed a third shape.
Right.
We converted them into pairs.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know, and then try to compare the results in the shape which neither looks like apple nor looks like orange. So seeing this was a very mind-opening, I should say. Even like, how are you going to match these two programs? RR program is actually 12 weeks, requires several different, there are different versions, I guess, but the most common version is 12 weeks, right?
You needed to normalize the data. So if you have an 8-week MBSR program and a 12-week relaxation response program, well, those are different interventions. And so you needed to get those, you needed to be using the same number base so that you knew what, oh, well, it's 37 here, but only 20 here.
Exactly. So even with the homework, the meditation time amount is different, the homework amount is different. Well, with randomization, we were able to account for personal
bias,
motivation factors such as motivation, but with the intrinsic differences that are intrinsic to the philosophies of each intervention program were hard to account for, especially if you want to randomize and make a true comparison. We turned them into shapes that we didn't prefer, I guess. This also in the and they are going to meditate inside the scanner, and these are mostly people who have never been in a scanner.
Yeah, most people can't say they've been in a scanner before.
Exactly, and scanner environment is very different than meditating in your living room, or so for many people this can be challenging. Well, we had as a solution to that, we had our baseline measure, like they were asked to stay still, remain still in the scanner, and that should somehow help them calm. But then again, I can realizing how hard can it be for novices meditate inside the scanner was one of the take-home messages for me as a very junior scientist.
And it's also, as you're speaking about this, one of the things that comes to mind, and this is often a difficult thing to overcome with research, is there's an effect when someone has already done this particular thing before. So the first time they're loaded in, that's the big nerve-wracking, difficult one. The second time they go in, it's a little easier because they've done it before. So that itself is going to have some bearing on the results.
Exactly. So we it's even with our current project now, we have a scan at baseline, and also we have another scan. So for the listeners, the most appropriate way of doing this is having them in the scanner before the intervention and after the intervention, and comparing the intervention with a control intervention, which looks like an intervention but actually is not. So we usually use brain training puzzles to account for teacher interaction, group effects, but then again,
and active intervention, which is what I really like seeing as control. So it's not just wait list, you get nothing. It's no, we're doing something. It's just the active ingredient is out. So you're baking 2 cakes and one of them has no sugar.
Yes.
And so then you have an accurate, okay, we know the only difference here is sugar. It's not also we didn't bake one of them. Everything
Exactly.
is as close as you can with the research that you have.
Exactly. So seeing those difficulties, this is my first project in Sarah Lazar's lab. So I'm very proud and also grateful that this study taught me a ton about research, how to do it, how to analyze it. And again, all of our collaborators, Birta Hostar was always there for me to answer my questions. Dr. Lazar was always there. Jawaria Hashmi was always there to supervise my methods, the quality of my methods. Mm-hmm. And another good thing we did, this was actually Sarah's idea, and I'm very proud. This is kind of very nerdy.
This is the right place for that.
Good. So we wanted to be sure that they are actually focusing on their bodies, right? This is body scan. Yeah. So before doing any comparison or any fancy analysis, I went ahead and analyzed whole brain to see in terms of which regions were active. And actually a cluster, their somatosensory cortex was active, which kind of tells us that they are indeed engaging, they are sensing stuff, they are perceiving their bodily sensations. So this is a small thing, and which is rarely, at least I haven't seen in other researchers to have a sanity check, if I may call it.
Yes.
So doing that sanity check and affirming that we are sane was the best part, I think, of this research.
For those who are listening, I really wish you could see both of us on screen. Gunesh and I we're smiling because this is good science, and we love that. And that's really wonderful to see, and especially with your first project with Sarah's lab. I'm so glad that you had that opportunity.
Thank you.
Gunesh, is there anything else that you want to share about this particular project, or if there's anything else that you'd like to mention to the listeners?
I don't know what I can say other than meditate in these difficult times, I guess. At least as an, I don't know, as an immigrant scientist, if I may say it, meditation helps.
We're seeing that again and again. Thank you so much. Well, for those who are listening, our guest today, Gunesh Sevinc, you can find out more about her work, and I'll be linking to Sarah Lazar's lab to find out more about this. And of course, I'll have a link to the paper as well. Our guest today, Gunesh Sevinc, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate all of your time and work on this.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.